Hi, I'm Zetetic. So, Chapter 2 of Fire Emblem, Genealogy of the Holy War is kind of a meme. It's well known for forcing players, particularly blind players that don't already know the course of the events of the map, to backtrack a lot. And that can be kind of a drag, to say the least. If you know what this map entails, you can imagine how it goes for All Ardens, even for someone who knows what's going to happen in the chapter, just because of the Arden's low movement. So after I handled arena stuff and got Holin, I sent the Ardens out of the castle, prioritizing Sigurd and Quan, as well as Ethlin and Deidre for the Lightbrand event. The first big attack in this chapter is led by the creeper Elliot, who is apparently so obsessed with winning Lachesis' affection, he attacks her? If you're not familiar with enemy commander AI in this game, that's okay. You don't have to be. Some commanders retreat when you kill a significant amount of their troops, and some don't. The ones that do retreat go back into their castle of origin, and leave the castle the next turn with a fresh group of troops. Now, Elliot is one of those commanders that does that. There's another commander that does that later on in this chapter too. If we kill too many of Elliot's troops, or Lachesis and her bizarre triplet knights do too much killing, then Elliot will run away, and since he's on a horse, there's no way we'll catch up to him. If we don't catch up to him, which we won't, then he comes back with reinforcements, which slows our conquering of Hairhine, something like that, the first castle to conquer, and that delays the event of Lewin and Sylvia's appearance, which also hinders our ability to get the villages for ourselves. So we target Elliot with extreme prejudice before his troops all get killed, using Sigurd and Ethlin to get the job done before wiping out the rest of his troops. That gives us a lot of breathing room to deal with the next group of troops, which consists of a variety of armor knights, as well as some ballista and a healer. We recruit Lachesis and head off to the northwest. There is basically no way to get the bargain ring with all Ardens, short of praying to Loptis that one of them grows wings or becomes a centaur. So the urgency here is mostly focused on getting the Armor Slayer, which is an extra sword for our Ardens. Anyway, clashing with this next group of troops isn't too complicated. The only moderate challenge is Philip, the first boss with Pavis.
Pavice.
Thanks, dictionary person, I'll try to remember that. Anyway, Quan has Lex's Brave Axe from Chapter 1, so we use that to whittle him down and ultimately finish him off with Ethlin, allowing her to secure the return band. The rest of Philip's troops aren't particularly notable here, though it is worth mentioning that I'm favoring Ethlin for experience a little bit because I want the stats she passes down to her kids to be reasonably high. As we approach Hairhine, and by extension Bordeaux, arguably the most annoying boss of this chapter in a normal playthrough, I position Ethlin in the hopes that I can both clear a path to the gates and get a combination bonus critical from her with Sigurd's killer bow, which does actually turn out to happen. This severely cuts down on the time spent seizing the castle and is probably one of the luckier moments of this chapter, since Bordeaux dies on enemy phase to a killer bow hit, and once we seize, we can focus on Anthony. Also, Arden goes to the beach because hidden item event and good game design. Lewin and Sylvia appear now, but Sylvia is the only one of the two with a usable weapon, so her job is to basically escort Lewin to the Armor Slayer village so he can grab a sword for himself. In the meantime, Sigurd's ragtag gang of war criminals heads north to deal with Macbeth. But there's also the matter of Waltz and Beowulf. Of the two, Waltz is the only real challenge here, and there's also the matter of the horde of generic troops that are blocking the way to the castle. So the first task is to basically split up, taking the weaker and more injured units and sending them back to the chapel southwest of Nordian Castle so that they can heal and get in position for the rest of the chapter, while the stronger units head northward. It takes 3 phases for Sylvia to kill a single bandit, or essentially 3 turns, since bandits that burn down villages don't attack on enemy phase. So she's kind of just making her way along here, trying to save villages that she can actually save within that time, while Lewin follows along. On the other side, Sigurd's forces block off the narrowest part of the valley and let the generic commander come to them. From there, it's mostly a matter of dealing with Waltz's group next. To do that, the Ardens pull back a little to reorganize, prioritizing strong and uninjured Ardens at the front, with other Ardens moving back to heal and get out of the way. After doing a bit of chip damage, Sigurd kills Waltz and takes the Paragon Band, which will enable him to get some double experience for the rest of the chapter, as I intend to transfer it to someone else in Chapter 3, at least for a little while. With Waltz dead, the rest of his troop needs to be dealt with. That, of course, doesn't include Beowulf, who is an armor knight now and is nowhere close to keeping up with his 4-legged friends. There's nothing much to say about dealing with the rest of the mercenaries, it's just a slog cutting them all down. Beowulf isn't even close by the time all of Waltz's guys are dead, and we have to move closer to him. We do eventually recruit him with Quan, paying Beowulf 10,000 gold to get a new unit. After that, we continue to go to Anthony. Cutting down the castle guards is an unremarkable slog. It is easily the slowest and most painful moment of the chapter, and that's all there really is to say about it. My footage for this part of the chapter goes on for about 20 minutes. The lack of multiple units with Pursuit, or any magic users at all, really hurts here. Ethlin's Lightbrand is an MVP here, since Lewin and his Armor Slayer are still very far away. Then we have to deal with Macbeth, the third of 4 Pavis-having bosses on the map. While the lesser Ardens are getting a position near Macaulay, the entire team of Sigurd, Quan, and Ethlin are trying their best to get through Macbeth, or more specifically, his Pavice. It's so annoying, but at least, unlike Bordeaux and the villages, there isn't any particularly pressing reason to kill Macbeth quickly. It's more of a convenience thing. So Sigurd basically whittles Macbeth down with a killer bow, while Quan occasionally smacks him with a brave axe. I try everything to make it less painful, like putting Ethlyn and Deidre next to their husbands. It eventually gets me a combination bonus as well as a couple of untimely deaths. The arena is used to rig the random numbers a little, and Ethlyn finally manages to find Macbeth's neck somehow, and cuts off his head with a spinning magic triangle, just like in Shakespeare's play. Sorry for the spoilers. Well, that was 30 minutes of footage boiled down into a single paragraph, Jesus Christ. Moving on to the next bit of quote-unquote fun, Macaulay. Several of our Ardens are already in position, but Sigurd and Quan have to walk back there. Luckily, Ethlyn can just return home with the power of jewelry. In any case, the first issue that needs to be dealt with here is having more fighters handy. I would rather not walk Deidre back, so she sells her slim sword in Anthony so that Arden can buy it in Nordian somehow. Then it's time to fight the first group of mounted enemies. That's pretty standard fare. Use high defense Ardens and pick them off one by one. Not terribly exciting. Once all the rioters are dead, we have to deal with the Macaulay Castle guards. This consists mostly of Clement's frontline troops, who are mostly Myrmidons, plus a few mages and archers. I'm not scared of the Myrmidons or archers, but the mages kind of frighten me. Most of our Ardens still have 0 resistance, and the ones that don't just have 1 or 2. Sigurd's barrier ring would be handy, but it's on Sigurd, and he's all the way elsewhere. Fortunately, we get him to the front so that he can help kill the guards. Everyone but the mages is easy pickings, and we deal with the mages carefully, one at a time, by clearing certain Myrmidons out of the way to make just enough space for exactly one mage to come closer. As units get injured, I send them back to the chapel to heal, and then bring them up to the front line again as soon as I can. Once all the frontline troops are dead, it's time to confront Clement. He has a sleep staff, so dealing with him is a real treat. I take a few cracks at Clement with Sigurd's killer bow, trying to either rig a critical hit, or a Paviz activation on Sigurd. But it takes a few tries to get right, and to reduce Clement to just enough HP for Finn to sweep in and kill him. I prefer to give Finn the sleep staff here because I want him to have money on hand, as I intend to have him buy the Paragon Band in Chapter 3, just so he can get a few more levels. But mostly Finn steps in here because Quan and Sigurd are sleeping. Finally, we have to deal with Augusti. The first quote-unquote threat is Erin's squad. The Pegasus Knights are not terribly strong, and Erin isn't armed with a weapon she can use anymore. So it's a matter of moving Lewin up to talk to Erin while clearing the Pegasus Knights out of the way. Easy peasy. After we get Erin, we almost immediately face Zane. Like Elliot before him, Zane is another one of those commanders that, if you kill enough of their soldiers, they suddenly realize that all human life is incredibly cheap, except their own, and run back home to get more troops to throw away and try to make Sigurd feel bad about killing people, which never actually happens. But Zane proved to be a bit tricky for us to deal with since he's pretty strong and has a 2-range attack, so exposing too many weak units to him is an impossibility that only gets units killed. What I do instead is form a short line between the trees and the cliffs, although it's slightly staggered to give room for Zane to come close and expose himself to attack. Then I just delete him with Sigurd while most of the rest of his army is still alive. That prevents Zane from retreating, obviously, but it still leaves us with a big mess to clean up. Like all the other enemy groups, this is done by the numbers. No fancy crap here, just bashing enemies repeatedly with sharp objects until they disappear. Enemies in Fire Emblem 4 don't typically attack if their attack is lower than their defense of the units in their range. With that in mind, I only send up Ardens with defenses higher than the ballista's attack to avoid getting shot and ultimately save myself time on enemy phase because, hoo boy, this has sure been a map. Fortunately, at this point, the battle is pretty much won. After a short fight with some armor knights, we go up the cliff and fight the old baron, Chagall. It takes some time, but we're eventually able to chip him down with Quan and Sigurd and finish him off with Quan, securing the physics staff, which is basically just money in stick form to our Ardens. And finally, Chapter 2 is over. In the next episode, I'll be covering my playthrough of Chapter 3. If you enjoyed this video, consider leaving a like and subscribing to my channel. I also read every comment I get and respond to questions. Thank you for watching, and have a good one.